Jim.
Good evening, and welcome to the Norfolk Board of Selectmen's meeting of Tuesday, June 30th. First and foremost, I want to wish everybody a healthy and safe July 4th. I hope everyone enjoys the holiday and that everyone remains safe. That's the most important thing. I want to introduce my fellow selectmen. To my right, Mr. Palumbo. To my left, Mr. Bugby. The one that will keep us on the narrow and straight path this evening, our Executive Assistant, Marion Harrington. Mr. Hathaway is on vacation. Mr. Bugby, would you read the agenda for us, please?
Happy to. I just also want to let people know this meeting will be audio and videotaped, so please be aware. At 7 p.m. we have Ray Goff with the Zoning Working Committee update. Action items, please consider approving the Surge DPW supplies per attached document for a period of 12 months commencing July 1st, 2015. Under appointments, we have a reappointment of John Weddleton to the Conservation Commission, appointment of Don Hanson to the Zoning Board of Appeals, and an appointment of Jeff Chalmers to the Zoning Board of Appeals. Under discussion items tonight, we have Board of Selectmen goals and the Lake Street letter, and no minutes to accept.
Thank you very much. We're still waiting for a few folks to join us from the Zoning Working Committee. Mr. Goff is coming in here shortly, I hope. But just as way of introduction, a group was formed almost a year ago, I think, probably pretty close to a year ago. We had a number of volunteers who have devoted a lot of time for a year, better part of a year, working on what we call the Southwood Project. This is a project that has been proposed on the old Southwood Hospital property. We have been working with a developer by the name of George Vallone and trying to work through the concerns and considerations that this project brings, as well as the benefits that this project brings. And we formed a group that has worked quite diligently. 12 meetings, pretty close, 10 to 12 meetings over the course of a year, all volunteers. We had representatives from all of the permitting boards as well as citizens. Aaron and Peter are here this evening. We're very grateful for all the work that you guys did. Sincerely grateful. A lot of hours, a lot of nights, a lot of good discussion. So we thank you. So what I'd like to do is turn this over to our planner who chaired this group and update us on where we are. Ray, come on up and join us.
Thank you. I think I provided you with a copy of the development agreement.
You did.
Via email. And so I'm going to speak about that and try to be intelligent about it.
You received my comments, correct?
Yes, I did. The group has been meeting for almost a year now to try to work through some of the issues that have come up with this development. We've done some presentations. George Vallone, who is the proponent of this project, to the town. They've done a cable presentation also to talk about the project. But what we've done is we've talked about the project amongst the group, amongst the zoning working committee, and we've come across a list of points where we think we have agreement on, and I just want to highlight you on some of those points. Number one was water. Water was a major issue on this project because in order to have almost 500 units of housing, you're going to need to provide water. The town, as you know, is in a situation where there's not quite enough water. There's enough to satisfy our current residents, but 500 more residents certainly would put a tax on our ability to provide water. Working with Mr. Vallone, he's looked at a number of different places that he could possibly get water from. The town of Walpole was one area. Rentham was another location that he looked into, Foxborough. And then, in addition, but maybe before this, he looked at trying to provide a well on his site so that he could get enough water. One of the conditions that he ran into on site was that there's a former landfill there, as well as the leaching beds for the septic system that was there. Those two added more restrictions to the ability to provide water. So he, under his advice from his engineers, they told him to look elsewhere to get water. He came to the town, and the DPW director, as many know, has been working on trying to find a new site one or multiple wells for the town, and he is under the impression that he has some good sources that we could possibly provide Southwood with the right amount of water. So with that, we have reached an agreement with Southwood, with George Vallone, to provide them with water, and in return, they would pay us up to $3 million for that. Welcome, Walter.
The planning board has just arrived.
So that's one area that we have. I think we've reached an accord, and I think that there's a comfort level between all parties that, thank you, that we can provide the water. The good thing is this project is going to be phased in over about 10 years. So there's plenty of time for us to ramp up for the water supply. I'm just looking for my copy of the agreement.
That's one of the questions that I had, because it does mention something about the timing of the water
Yeah.
versus the approvals and such.
So let's move
Payments.
forward with that idea just for a
Yeah.
moment. If he gets approval for, let's say 50 units, we would be obligated to provide the water supply. He would have to connect to our system, but we would be obligated to provide that water supply. 50 additional homes is not going to put a great strain on our water system. 500 definitely will, but, take that and move that forward, 50 per year for 10 years, and I think you can see that we can probably make all that work. And talking to the DPW director, he feels that we can get online and get all our approvals necessary so that we're ahead of the ball game.
Ray, let me just kind of jump in on that, because
Absolutely.
I've had extended conversations with Bob McGee on it. The phase-in of 10 years and the projection that we have for the new wells, which range anywhere from 1 to 4 years, depending on, there are a couple of options that are short-term, as we know, that we discussed at our last meeting, and there are a couple that are more longer-term. But the phase-in project of 10 years, Bob is quite confident that we will not have a water issue, as long as we have the funding
Right.
available, which, under this agreement, we would certainly have. We'll have the funding one way or the other. If this falls through, we'll still have to do the well. It's irrelevant. So it's just, we either bond it or we pay for it. Those are our options.
And one detail that I forgot to mention was that of that $3 million, initially we'll be receiving $1 million, and then the remaining over the course of the units, basically being phased in. So we'll receive the remaining money. The well itself, I think the $1 million will put us in a very good position with the current funding that we do have in place for water, so that there won't be a burden to the town to provide that. And in fact, it'll help us really move our well situation forward.
We have $758,000 of capital in the water department right now. The $1 million would come at the closing with the Archdiocese.
Yes.
He would write a check for $1 million at that time. That would give us $1.7 million, which will more than pay for the well. 1.5 is the estimate for a well, unless there's issues associated with minerals, in which case the treatment could be anywhere up to another $1 million.
Right. So we've gone through great detail on the well.
Great
I think-
detail.
I think the committee's comfortable
Right.
with this situation, and I know George is comfortable with this situation. The next issue that came up was hazardous waste cleanup. There was a former landfill there, and there's a few other locations where oil was spilled. There is an agreement with the Archdiocese between George Vallone and his company to clean up prior to construction. So he's on the hook to make this place clean before he is able to even start his construction. He's going to have to meet state requirements. The state actually will approve any plan that he puts into place for cleanup. Backing up for just a second, though, is the actual testing and exploration that's necessary to determine the extent and the depth of contamination that might be there and what types of contamination. So the state would actually oversee that process and ensure that when they get results back, they find out what's in the ground, and if there's more testing that's necessary, they would require that extra testing. and to ensure the public health and safety. So,
And that's through the LSP, right? The
That's-
fact that the town would have an LSP representing the town at the
Yes.
developer's expense.
Yep.
And there would be the LSP that represents the developer, so there'd be basically two LSPs. So
Yeah.
isn't that, I believe that's the way the coordination is with the state in terms of the state
Typically-
oversight, correct?
typically, the LSP would apply to the state. The state would review everything. George has agreed to have an additional LSP, so thank you for mentioning that. That would be hired by the town using his funds.
Mhm.
So just as we would a consultant engineer for a planning project, the LSP would do the same thing for us. So that would ensure that our side is being represented well enough. Sewage disposal is another issue that came up in the process, and he has at least one location that he thinks he can provide adequate resources to dispose the sewage that's on site. We have asked him to do some preliminary research on that and to ensure that this site can handle what would be coming out of it and be able to be treated and put back into the ground. In addition to that, he's also agreed to do analysis of the stormwater so that, as you're putting things into the ground, stormwater and effluent, he's going to make sure that the ground can handle it. One of the questions that comes up with that idea is, if the ground can't handle it, what happens? Do we reduce the number of units? Is the project dead? Well, what's going to happen? We've had conversations about reducing the number of units, and that's the direction that George would like to go. I didn't go through this, but we have 220 units of basically townhouse
They're
housing.
on that map right behind you.
There's 120 units of assisted living. There's 150 units of apartments. There's 16,000 square feet of retail, as well as 16,000 square feet of office, and I think I got it all.
You did.
So you're looking at approximately 500 units of housing that would happen, and so what we've talked about is what comes first. If you're going to reduce the number of units, what would you reduce first? He doesn't want to reduce the townhouses, in terms of how the development would turn out. That's probably the most profitable part of the development. We have asked him if he's going to reduce anything, we would reduce the apartments first. And that would reduce any burden or concern. The committee did have some concern about apartments at first. We have moved that towards a discussion about having high-end apartments rather than just any type of apartment. So this would mean more luxury type apartments, and the developer has agreed to do that. So that's part of the development agreement.
A question along those lines. In reading the draft agreement, which is very well done, so I echo Jim's comments in terms of appreciation for the folks that have been working on this so hard the past several months. What do those assisted units look like? I mean, what are they? Like a small, almost like a studio type of apartment? Is that?
Yeah, it would be
they're
more
not
of a studio
apartments, but
apartment. There would be
is
no
that-
kitchen. And some of them would not have a kitchen, others would have a small kitchen, eating-type kitchen. But it's more of a studio apartment.
So it's like one bathroom,
Right.
bedroom.
Exactly.
some Combination kitchen, living space, what have you,
Yeah.
if there's a kitchen at all.
That's my understanding of it. I mean, obviously, I'm no expert on what they would look like, but
I mean, we may want to understand that a little better, just to know what we're signing up for, because that's just nebulous to me. I just don't, I'm not.
yeah, we all need an education on
experienced
certain
in
parts.
terms of what his
I agree.
vision is for that assisted component. Yeah.
Walter? Sure.
Yeah.
Grab a mic if you can, Walter.
Is it on?
The 180-bed assisted living facility is made up of 120 independent living units, and those are the ones that would have a kitchen in order to qualify as affordable housing units. So there will be small apartments that are self-sufficient. In other words, you can have your kitchen, your living room, your bedroom. in
At
the-
least 120 of the 180.
120, right. And then there's 30 memory care units and 30 hospice care units, completing the assisted living complex.
So on those, we don't know just yet in terms of whether they'll have kitchens, all of them, or some of them.
They wouldn't, like hospice, you wouldn't have a kitchen.
They would not,
Hospice,
they would not.
Memory care, because you
They
wouldn't
would
know
not.
enough to cook and stuff like that, so you gotta assume they would.
Well,
have.
and that's why it was unclear to me. So some portion will and some portion won't.
Yeah,
Okay.
120, because that's what they want for the key for the affordable housing, right? It's
Yeah.
120, if you can live there, you can get affordable.
That's in the agreement. It's right in the draft agreement.
Christine, I don't know if you can direct the camera, but I recognized Aaron and Peter. Let me also recognize Walter and Joyce Terrio, and John Weddleton in the back of the room is also members of this committee. So thank you folks as well for all the hard work.
Can I ask a question, Mr. Chairman?
Oh, of course.
Not a question, but on when he's agreed to the luxury high-end apartments, how do you codify that to say, well, who defines what's luxury? Is it, I know luxury could be $2,400 a month, $1,200 a month for one. but-
It's the cost to build them more than anything else. These would have granite countertops, granite
Are we
bathrooms.
putting that
They would be.
somewhere, or how do we know? I know it's gonna
There
happen.
are ways, Westwood did this in their agreement. John, maybe you can speak to that, because I know it was one of the things that you were a driver of. Can you grab the mic and speak to that?
Oh, okay, thank you. Where you're gonna require like granite not just shoddy, okay.
You can pretty much ensure that the construction cost will generate a much higher rental income by approving a certain type of unit.
Okay. Perfect.
If it costs you $2,000 to build.
No, I
it,
get
you
that,
can't rent-
I
you
just didn't
can't
know
rent
how we
for
assure it for the people at
800.
home, like,
Yeah.
he just doesn't build up something and, it's only costs him, $600 to build and he's happy with $500 a month rent, which, okay.
Right, right.
Thank you.
It's a good point. We had a lot of discussion about that, a lot of folks were nervous about apartments, and that if they weren't high-end, they could flow down into, even potentially all the way down into Section 8, which has happened in other developments. I mean, there are 4 40Bs now proposed in Rentham, 2 more in Foxborough that I'm aware of, and 2 in Medfield. So there's just something's going on. And just for folks at home, for those that attended the, pardon me for interrupting, but I just wanted to make this one point. The meeting we had over at the elementary school, no, I'm sorry, the middle school, George made it very clear that he has no interest in pursuing a 40B. I think those that were there heard him very clearly state that. He's come forward to try and work a deal. If he can't work the deal, as he said in his own words, I go home. So he's not using that in any way as a threat or as an alternative to try and force any issues with the town. To his credit, that has never come up, and he's made it stated emphatically that that is not something he would pursue. So I think that's an important distinction, because there's something in the weather. I mean, we've got 3 proposed here in Norfolk at this point in time, so
Sure.
It seems to be a thing.
And that's actually a good segue into the next section, which would be affordable housing. The 120 units that would come out of the assisted living would be counted as affordable, and that's what George has agreed to, 120 units of affordable housing that would be created as part of this development. We've worked on trying to phase that in so that the units occur simultaneously with the other units. And some of this stuff is still up in the air in terms of George is still trying to work with some developers that would put up these units and do the apartments. So a little bit of this finer detail would have to be hammered out as we move forward. But I think we have a good body of an agreement here for the town to move forward with. And I think the committee should be commended for all the work that they've put into this, because they've put countless hours and a lot of effort into putting this agreement together for the town, and to make this the best agreement that we think we can put together. There's a few other smaller issues. I call them smaller issues. They are important issues. One is landscaping and pedestrian pathways. There's discussion in here about providing access down to Dedham Street, down on Dedham Street to the intersection with 115. There's also recreation facilities that are part of this, trails and a recreation area. There is, I forgot another thing that I should have mentioned, is there's money being put aside for public safety, for the police and fire departments to assist with any kind of increases that would happen in terms of staffing. So there's money in there. There's money in there for an additional police officer and I believe an additional ambulance.
Two firefighters.
And 2 fire. And we're talking around $800,000 that would be given to the town at the time of closing. So that would be added to that $1 million so the town can move forward with dealing with some of the financial costs that may come with this development. There's also in the development, there's a health club, meeting rooms, and that's more with the townhouses. And what else do I have here? You know, we've done a fiscal impact analysis. George has done a fiscal impact analysis that the town has gone over numerous times, had some tweaking here and there, but I think the numbers are good, and the town is going to have a windfall when this project is done in terms of, you know, there's very few children that would come out of this type of development, and the impact on our public safety issues would be nominal. So, you know, I'm at the point in my mind where I think the development agreement is in a very good place. You know, I haven't talked with the committee about this, but I personally feel that we're ready for a handoff to the Board of Selectmen, and to make that handoff sooner than later. I don't see there's much else that is necessary as part of the agreement. Over a month ago, we had a vote to forward the agreement with some changes. We've made those changes. In fact, the agreement that you have before you is what I had posted on the website, and I had also shared with George, and so I think where it stands now, I personally would like to see the town Board of Selectmen pick up this agreement and see if you can move forward with it sooner than later. And maybe that's tonight, maybe that's in a month or so. I know there are some members of the committee that still have some issues that they feel are unresolved. I certainly don't want to stop them from having a conversation about that, but I certainly think that we've reached a point where I think we've got a good agreement. It's almost like when you're writing a term paper and you reach that point where you say to yourself, I think this is good. This is a good enough paper, and I should stop writing. So that's how I feel about it at this point. I'd certainly be open for some feedback from the Board of Selectmen and see if there's any questions that you may have.
Well, I'd like to offer a thought.
Sure.
I would like to see the committee meet one more time,
Okay.
if possible next week. We're running out of time. That's part of where we are now. We have a September 4th deadline to get this on the warrant. Lawyers are going to get involved now. You know, the hardcore negotiations of nailing down an agreement, that does not move quickly. So we do need to get to the point of negotiating this, but I'd like to see the committee have one more whack at this. They've worked hard.
Oh, yeah,
And
they
so
have.
if you guys would be willing, Monday or Tuesday of next week, just to have one more whack at it, be sure that, you know, we're not going to get all we want. He's not going to get all he wants. That's part of negotiations. That's part of the deal. We want to be careful that we don't take steps backward. But that would be my suggestion, that we just have one more meeting just to tie up any loose considerations. We may never get unanimous agreement on all the issues. That's okay. But what do you think? Walter?
Well, I think that's fine. I'd certainly be willing to do that. I just make a request that when we do reach the point where we hand this off to you and you take it forward, that just as a courtesy to the committee people who've worked hard on this, keep us informed as to what's going on.
Oh, absolutely.
And secondly, just a point that Ray made, and I'll reemphasize, what we have here in this draft has been agreed to already. So there shouldn't be a lot of need to some heavy arm twisting and negotiating with George. I think he's pretty much in agreement with this. Now, should changes be proposed by town council or yourselves that say, hey, we really need to do blah, blah, then you're in a different ballgame. But what we have here, I think we've got agreement with George on.
We had a conference call with George 2 days ago? I can't, what day is today?
Yesterday.
Tuesday. Yesterday.
Yesterday, yeah,
Yesterday.
today's on
We
Tuesday,
had it
so
yesterday.
we already talked about Sunday.
Ray and I had a conference call with George, and I think I would echo exactly what you said. I think we have an agreement in concept. We just need now to get down to the legalese of the agreement and get the council involved. I don't anticipate that our town council, and he doesn't anticipate that his council will have any major issues, but until it gets in the hands of lawyers, you never know. And they always take longer than we want them to. So I would agree, Walter. I think there's very little more to hash out, but I think one more meeting would still be a good thing. If you agree. If you think we're at the point where we don't need it, that's okay too. Joyce, your thoughts? I mean, you guys have worked hard. You should have a say in this here.
Thank you. I echo Walter's sentiments. There was a small group that felt that we might be able to go after George for a little bit more. There are still some concerns that we have. I'm not so sure with the agreement, but maybe with the development. We did basically do an informal ratification of this agreement, and that's why it was sent off to George with our agreement that Ray and the Board of Selectmen or you, Jim, had that discussion. So I think George was, is certainly in agreement with this. It's still not a done deal. We still have to go to town meeting. The town still needs to approve it. George is still going to have to go through the whole process of the boards and the permits. But I think this is a really, really good start for the town. We did work hard. We got a lot out. I think it's a really, really good compromise.
Thank you.
If the rest of the group wants to meet, I'll come in, but I thought we were pretty much done with this.
John, your feeling? Agree? Aaron?
Before Aaron speaks, can I just ask a question?
Sure.
So Ray, I printed two copies. One has red. Is this what was sent? I guess I'm not really clear what was sent back to George.
The one without the red is the one that was sent to George, so the very clean copy.
But so who's these comments, the site work, and who's red? When I printed it, it comes out in red. This is what George wants and we didn't agree to, or we did?
In my discussions with George, that's what we were discussing, and that's one of the reasons.
Those are open issues.
Those are issues that we were discussing, and so.
So we just sent back agreement without addressing these issues, though?
I
It
have,
looked like to me.
I have not addressed those issues.
So it says George Vallone, so he
Yeah.
made those comments, and if you
And
look
some
at
of those
the,
issues really aren't the privilege of
detail.
even this board. They're the privilege of planning board.
Okay, I just was curious. So George just got back a clean thing. It doesn't, like I said, address this issue about reducing if something happens here.
Exactly.
Correct.
Okay.
yeah, right.
Aaron?
A couple of thoughts. I'll try and keep it short because I have a tendency to ramble. But first, the developer agreement, as we've proposed it, or the committee's proposing it to the town, is non-binding in any way, shape, or form until it's approved by the Board of Selectmen and the town.
Correct.
So, although we all are speaking highly of it, it, at this point in time, has little meaning legally until there's further agreements to it. So I think that's an important statement, because a lot of things can change between now and the time it becomes a legal document.
Aaron, can I just one point on that?
Sure.
The town doesn't approve the agreement. They approve the zoning change. And the agreement is part of the condition of that change, but they don't approve the agreement.
Fair. All right, so I guess I have 2 points to make. I don't think there'll be new points to anyone on the committee. One is that, as was introduced, the 40B projects that are being presented all around us have proven to be financially successful for the developers. Both Norfolk County and just residences in general are a hot topic right now being built, and because they're profitable and they're highly occupied. So there's a need and there's a profit to be made from them. So I think the town has a very strong bargaining position. And I think the town should remember that and take advantage of that position as they go forward with these negotiations. Picking up on that, I think, although our agreement and the face of the affordable housing looks like it's very successful, I think we're leaving something on the table, in my personal opinion. Due to a math and a benefit or an enticement that's put out there by the affordable housing unit, 25% of the affordable housing units are made affordable. So it's not 120 affordable units, it's 25% of 120 units. So it's really only 26 units that are affordable being presented for this project. If the town was developing a project on any other site, our town bylaws require a 10% affordable housing unit. So if you take the 550 housing units that are being proposed on the site, that's 55 affordable units. In my opinion, we're only building 26 on this site. We're getting credit for 120, but we're only building 26 affordable units. So in terms of putting people in affordable housing, we're not meeting the 10% requirement, or we're not providing 10% of the development as affordable units to the public. So in my opinion, we should be holding a 10% number and getting 55 affordable units out of this project. And I think it's, you know, if we get 25% of the 120 units, then we only need another 26 units, which is only 10% of the townhouses. And to me, in a world where these 40B projects are putting 25 to 30% affordable housing into their projects, this seems like a doable task. So again, so if you take the fact that I think the town has a very good bargaining position, and the requirements of the 10% of the affordable housing, I think we could get a little more out of this project for the town. The reason I think that's important is because I think this is going to be a hard sell to the town. The density, the size of the project, it's not something that I think the people are going to take to. They haven't recently. I think it's a great project for the town. I'm all behind it, and I hope we can make it happen. But I think there's a long road ahead of us to convince the town and to get to a legal deal. So to that being said, I'm happy to have another meeting, happy to find another way to stay involved going forward if that's possible as well.
Okay. Thanks. Peter?
If I may, can I approach the board?
Sure.
Take a seat.
Thank you, Peter.
Thank you, Peter. One for Red. Just looking to get a mic here. Mr. Palumbo, Mr. Leanne, Mr. Bugby. First, I would like to thank you for the opportunity you have given me with my appointment to the Zoning Working Committee. On this committee, I have been able to work together with a group of Norfolk residents who are committed to overseeing what is best for the town of Norfolk. Some who have devoted their time to these boards and committees in Norfolk for many years. I would like to thank those members also for the time they have given to this committee as well as to the other boards and committees in Norfolk. It has been a year since our committee's first meeting. We have made progress on the Southwood development. Original ideas by Mr. Vallone for the Southwood development included 4 different development concepts on the property, including multi-generational housing of 250 townhouse units, 150 apartments, using the old Southwood Hospital building as an assisted living facility, and a commercial building close to the Valley Street end of the property. The committee was more in favor of age-restricted housing for the property. Mr. Vallone didn't agree with the area had the market for this. The committee shared concerns for the apartments, such as the high number of units and the impact it may have on our school system. We were all very excited with the idea of the assisted living facility and the reuse of the Southwood Hospital building. Many other concerns were discussed during our monthly meetings. We spent much time on the issues such as the water supply, sewer treatment, the fiscal impact on Norfolk's municipal services, affordable housing units within the development, and most important to me is the hazardous areas of concern on the property, such as the old dump site, the oil spill on the site, and the hazardous materials in the old buildings, such as asbestos.
Well, in mid-August last year, the old Southwood Hospital building was used for military training, which included explosives. This eliminated the idea of using the old hospital structure as the assisted living facility. Mr. Vallone approached the town of Walpole for possible sewer and water connections, but that was rejected. In search of water, Mr. Vallone also reached out to the prison without any success. Our last meeting in 2014 was early September, and many of these issues were still not resolved, including what Mr. Vallone would be building on the site. The zoning committee's next meeting together was 6 months later on March 16, 2015, with George Vallone. At this meeting, Mr. Vallone presented a new plan with 220 age-restricted housing units to replace the 250 multi-generational units he had planned earlier. This plan also included 150 one- and two-bedroom luxury apartments. The breakdown of that is 75 one-bedroom and 75 two-bedroom, so you know. A 120-bed assisted living facility and a commercial building by Valley Street once again. The 120-bed is now grown to 180 units, as discussed earlier. The discussion on water has now shifted to Mr. Vallone working with the town of Norfolk in search of a water supply. Mr. Vallone told us the Southwood development would have a packaged sewer treatment plan for its septic needs also. Mr. Vallone stated that the state DEP requirements now allow the oil spill to stay in place underground if it is not migrating, and he plans to cap the old landfill and take down the old Southwood buildings on the property. The committee has come forward with these ideas in the development agreement between the town of Norfolk and Mr. Vallone. Also, we discussed that Mr. Vallone pay for the water needs for the town of Norfolk and compensate Norfolk for its municipal impact. Much of this you will see in the development agreement. My comments on the Southwood development to the Board of Selectmen in consideration of bringing this forward to the town meeting are to make sure the town council review the final development agreement to protect the town of Norfolk's best interest. 2, I suggest that the town get its own impact analysis, or at least someone to review George's to compare with the proponents. There needs to be more consideration on the development's impact on our schools with the 150 apartments. I'm in favor of Mr. Vallone cleaning up the Southwood property to a green site by removing all of the landfill and any contamination from the oil. Norfolk will have its own licensed site professional to oversee the best interests of the town. I think the site should have 10% affordable component, 22 units, to the 220 age-restricted units. Right now, there are none considered. The elder people of Norfolk may need an affordable housing also. As it is proposed there, only 30 affordable units out of 560 units are proposed currently. I caution the town to be sure the independent living units will be accepted by the Department of Housing and Community Development. Alternate plans for affordable housing need to be implemented into the agreement to compensate if the independent living units are not accepted by DHCD. Norfolk should be sure that the agreement follow the property if Mr. Vallone fails to develop the site. Once the deed restriction is taken off the property by the state, we need reinsurance that the site won't become developed under 40B. Also, consideration should be given to any nonprofit uses of the property. Finally, for the town to be considerate of the impact this development will have on the area residents. The development is very large, and the density on the site will be far above anything Norfolk has ever allowed. Some concerns are traffic and water for these people. The town should route water through their neighborhood to help them. Thank you. Peter Diamond, Member at Large, Zoning Working Committee, Town of Norfolk.
Thank you very much,
Yeah,
Peter.
thank you, nice job.
You're welcome.
And Peter's echoed those comments right through. We've heard them, as a committee, we've heard those comments a number of times.
Peter, I appreciate your hard work on it. Thank you.
Thank you.
He does raise the question, in his point number 4 about how quickly do we get the housing to say whether, because we get the 120, that counts. Assume if that doesn't count, we have something we have to go back to Ray for. Either.
Yeah, we would definitely have to go back and move on to another way to make the affordable units count. Our number is 120. That's what we're asking them to give us. So we want credit for 120. How that happens, through
Who
the.
works with that? Does he have to take care of that, or do we work in conjunction with him?
We would have to work in conjunction with
to
them.
work in conjunction.
In order to make that happen, and it would have to be a fair and equitable way to do this, and the town would certainly have to get the number of units that we agreed to. And that's one of the reasons why we wanted to put a development agreement together, was to say, we're getting this, you're giving that. So it's all on the table, and we all understand what our expectations are and what we're getting out of this.
Ray, my comment with regard to bonding, George had put something into the draft agreement, which I know that the group may not have reviewed yet, but it would seem to be incorrect. Comment he makes is that the site work related to each phase of the development must be bonded prior to the issuance of the first certificate of occupancy for each phase. Shouldn't that be building permit?
This actually is an area where the planning board would be involved.
Right,
And
this
it's
needs-
really,
actually, that's gonna come out of the
in-
agreement.
It's in their realm.
It's not part
It
of
just, it seems incorrect.
It doesn't belong
It is
here.
incorrect.
Yeah.
And we talked with George about that. We've struggled with the boundaries of this.
Yeah.
There are certain things that we have the privilege of creating in terms of the overlay zone, and this committee has had input to that. There are things we don't. We can put anything we want in there about access off of 1A and sidewalks and all of that. We actually have no say. Your board has say on that. So it's not binding. So we want to be sure that we don't have things in the agreement that encumber our permitting boards from their authority. So that will come out.
We talked about a lot of different topics. That was certainly one of the topics that we talked about. It remains in the development agreement at this point, but it may come out at a later date.
Just, I was part of the working study also, and so I'll just give my thoughts on it if I may. I agree with Peter and Aaron about the affordable housing. As a member of the Municipal Housing Trust, I'm an advocate for affordable housing. I think we all are in many respects, but we've worked hard at that in town, and we've made a lot of progress. And there is a need. There is really a need. And we raised it to George in our conference call with him the other day, and I think I think there's room to negotiate that. In fact, I know there's room to negotiate that, and I agree with your point. Credit's wonderful. We want the credit because that helps us in terms of future considerations, but having actual places for people to go is what counts. So I agree with you. That's something we're going to try and work through. Well, points well taken. Yeah.
I thought of another point.
Uh-oh.
In terms of phasing, there's been some conversations about phasing and occupancy and building permit, but at the last presentation, George mentioned that he was holding the retail off until the end and almost hinted that if he couldn't find anybody to take it, then he wasn't going to build it. So I think it's important for us to find, if we believe in it, which I think we all do, I think we need to find a way to tie the full build-out of the site to a phasing plan and hold him to the full development of that phasing plan.
I'd like to hear Walter's perspective on that in planning board members, because that's an interesting debate. You don't want, we had buildings here sit vacant for 6-7 years. Look what's gone on down at River's Edge. How long has that been, Walter? 10 years?
It's been a while. But I think to this point, Aaron does make a good point that we need to build some language into this development agreement or into some other document that describes the effort that George will make to make this thing work in terms of the retail and or office building. It could go either way, by the way. It could be all retail, it could be all office, or it could be a mix, depending on who he can find for clients. But until he's willing to describe the efforts he's going to take to to make that happen, we are kind of hanging out there in the breeze. Two other comments I would make, which came from that meeting we had at the middle school, where he was discussing things with the neighbors. One was that he would be willing to consider some sort of berm between the backside of that property
Yep.
and the neighborhood. Presently, the railroad acts as that berm. The right-of-way is built up several feet, probably 15 feet or 20 feet, and that really acts as a berm between the property and the neighborhood over on Everett Street. No?
No. Where they dug the
Introduce yourself, Mark, if
Mark
you would.
Clarice, 22 Everett Street,
Thanks.
where the test holes were dug a couple of weeks ago. I didn't get the laser rangefinder out. About 150 feet from my well, and the railroad bed's down here, and I'm looking at the holes being dug there. They're just level with me. So I don't know where they're gonna build this thing, but if they're digging test holes about 50 feet in from the bank that goes down to the railroad bed, they're just about 50 feet over. They dug, I think, 3 up front, and a couple further back, like another 75 feet. They're right up on, up on there. I mean, that's where I would put the berm. I guess you could still build a berm there. Now, Bikram Singh, who lives next to me, he can see the hospital. So if you look at that the outer ring of townhouses, it's so close to his property. I mean, you really need to put some sort of a berm in there. And the water supply, I wouldn't be that upset if I had, got rid of the well and he provided me with water, That would make me feel a little bit better. That's a good idea.
Yeah, to that point, I remember George saying he'd be willing to explore connecting the water to the property by going down 115 and up Everett Street and in, as opposed to coming up 1A. Or maybe going both ways, I don't know. But he's willing to talk to that, as opposed to say, absolutely not,
Yeah, I mean, there's a few things. There's great drainage there. If that hill that he wants, if where the proposed water treatment plant is now, if he needed more area, come talk to me. Just on the other side of the railroad bed's the same gravel, and it's great. It's really good gravel, great drainage. I know
Mark?
what it's like there.
Mark, if we could work it out that all the residents that abut that property got town water, that would help, wouldn't it?
I think it would. I mean, I knocked on about 20 doors two nights before that meeting, and I probably got 10 people there, which isn't bad considering the short notice.
Pretty darn good.
And I took those and I taped them on, I stuck them under people's windshields and
Okay.
whatever that amounts to, So.
Peter, that's a good
But
thought.
I really think that if this thing happens, that you're going to have to take special consideration to some of the property owners. Bikram and I are in there. We're 650 feet off the road. That's in our face, and we just want it to be nice.
Agreed.
I mean,
Okay.
the water, and I'm talking for myself. The water treatment plant would be a hell of a lot better for me than townhouses in my face. However, if he needed more space, or it worked if the treatment plant was further away, that's an option, and then he can throw some more townhouses up and make more money. Or take some of the 220 and move them over there. I don't know. I'm just throwing some things out.
John?
First of all, Mark, I had a conversation with Mark at our meeting.
How you doing?
Those test holes are probably for drainage and not for sewer treatment. Sewer treatment test holes have to be witnessed by the Board of Health.
Oh, they do.
Right, and don't forget, what you're talking about now, you're trying to quantify this, where this agreement is so general. Everything that has to move forward has to go through the planning board, through a special permit, which requires a supermajority, which means that if we don't like it because it doesn't fit in, he doesn't get permit. So the things you're talking about, as we talked about before, these are all things that come up, and not to say that this layout that's on there now is anything like the layout is going to be. The sewer treatment plant could be in a totally different spot. So I wouldn't get concerned about that, because all of those details all come in with the next big hurdle he has. And the next big hurdle he has is getting special permits for all of these properties. As far as this goes, which brings to the point why we don't want a 40B, and 40B people look at things differently. A 10-year project, a 25% maximum profit, 2.5% a year. Anybody with any reason is going to get a municipal bond tax-free for 4% and not risk millions of dollars. Someone that does that project, which the town loses control on, is someone that's going to mass produce this with less than adequate buildings and structures and have a major rental project, someone like an Avalon, a national company. Someone like George going through this, willing to work with us, says a lot about the whole project. Yeah. And like I was saying, this isn't a Shangri-La piece of land. And the components of this project, of everything we've asked him to do, and he's done it. And Peter may be right, the children may be more or less, and I do think we should do our own study, but still, the components make it so this is going to minimize the children there. Mm-hmm. And I keep reminding folks, it's on the outskirts of town, it's across from a maximum security prison. He is cleaning out the brownfield, which maybe 1 in 30 or 40 developers would even do. This is before he even starts. Right. So I think the ability to work with him is super, and my feeling is that he's been fair. Yeah. Right. And when you start, and I would like to get much more for the town too, but you really have to be careful, because when you start to ask for things, and he's got his limits, he's got his thoughts, and what's your response when he says no? What's your backup? What's your backup stand? And that's what we got to be careful of. Right, Pulte was walking away from the 100-lot subdivision in our town, and we were part of this, Jim and myself, because they would not allow one affordable unit in the whole Foxfront subdivision. It wasn't in their scope, it wasn't in their national plans, and they said if we don't allow them to put those units off-site, right, they were walking away. And we had some folks that were in financial jeopardy, so the town ended up working with him. On George's discussion with Ray and I on a conference call, we had talked about Toll Brothers being one of the people interested in this project, Pulte another. Both of those people in their general business plans do not want affordables in their projects, which is kind of negative will if you think for a public company saying that, but that's their prototype. So we have to be careful by how far we push before the man just says, I want nothing to do with it. But as far as all the particulars for what you have, and your input is super, as we talked about, that's all done at another stage, not at this one.
Right, right.
So it's, even though you'd like to get it all done now, I understand, but, yeah, I know. I don't blame you. If I lived there, I'd be the same way.
I mean, I feel worse for the Singh family, because, I mean, the way it's laid out right now, that may not be that way. The townhouses are right there. Look out your bedroom window. There they are. Yeah. You gotta, make some adjustments on that. But I know he's trying to stuff as many in as possible.
And again, even if he gets this zoning change, it's all special permit, right, which means 4 out of 5 members have to vote for it.
Okay, thanks, John. Okay, any other thoughts, comments? Ray?
No, this is really step one in this project, and there's a lot more discussions that will have to happen if the zone change ultimately goes through. We're talking about a development agreement at this point to get us to a point where I think the town would be comfortable putting this on town warrant for a zone change. One of the things that it doesn't represent very well in this drawing, let's get the other ones here. There's a phasing plan, or there's a section plan. Here it is. All right. So the colors represent different aspects of the project. So the bluish color is your 220 units of duplexes, condos. And so this greenish color would be your assisted living. Excuse me, that's your apartment, sorry. The yellow is your assisted living, and this would be your office retail. Essentially, what we'd end up doing as far as a zone change is creating those blocks with a description of what would be allowed. So there would be, the zoning map would change to show those blocks. We'd have a description of what would be allowed within those blocks, and so there would be more detail that would have to come. But we're right now at the stage of, we've got a development agreement, and the agreement is what's going to get us to writing the language about what's going to be in the town warrant. So there's plenty more work to come.
A lot of work to come.
Yeah, and that's one of the points I wanted to make, was that, you know, we're not completely there yet in terms of hammering out every little detail that we need to hammer out. So I just wanted to point that out, because I think sometimes we get caught up in trying to deal with the one thing that's bothering us, and we kind of lose sight of the larger project. And that's the next step. That's where we're going next, if this does move forward.
So just to recap, if I don't get it all, somebody jump in. And Peter, thank you for writing it, 'cause it makes it a lot easier. So thank you for that. Obviously, town council will have to review everything. That's a given. There is still concern and consideration over the number of affordables, a point of discussion with George. I know, Peter, you want everything taken out, but the committee isn't in agreement with you. And I understand and appreciate it, but we don't own that land. The Archdiocese owns the land, and they have an agreement with George, and the state oversees it. He's taken an extra step and agreed to pay for a licensed person to oversee his licensed person to be sure it's done right. That's the best we can do. And I don't think we can negotiate that any further. And it's contrary to the state. I understand the desire, but I think that one is going to be off the table with George. I'm being honest. Obviously, the phase-ins, being sure that what counts really counts, and that it's not just our imagination. Good point. We need to check that. What did I miss? I mean, we know about the neighbors, and I think there should be, if we could work something into the agreement, John, would that be okay? Or John, or, well, there's three of you here. Would that be something that would be acceptable if we got at least an acknowledgement in the agreement in terms of working with the neighbors to be sure that he creates the right type? I would think that the water is something we could work out.
Yeah.
Because water's going to go into the site anyway.
Right.
I would think that's something that we could discuss with Bob McGee and see if we couldn't extend it over to the neighbors. That makes a lot of sense, Peter. I would think we could do that.
Yeah, that would make sense, and then
And it takes the issue off the table for you. Yeah.
the mitigation as far as buffers and stuff,
Yeah.
we would deal with that at the planning board. We do that with all major projects. We get into those conversations working with the abutter.
And the retail was the last item I had down, to be sure that there's some, in the agreement, there's some process that forces him to do the retail within a reasonable period of time. Did I?
One committee member who had an idea of having a loop for the water system to go up Everett Street through the project and then back down Route 1A towards the intersection with Route 115, and also be able to pick up the commercial development on Route 1A. So
Okay.
that was another idea. And as far as the site becoming green, George did say that he would dig into the landfill, and if it was something he could remove, he would. So
Well, the state's
it's
gonna
not
make 'em.
completely out of his mind at this point. So I just wanted to state that too. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Peter. We'll talk with Bob McGee and see what can or can't be done. I don't know the answer to that, but I know we're trying to loop everywhere we can, so if there's a way to do it, this would be a perfect time to do it.
Sure.
Yeah. Anybody, anything else? Okay, well, then we probably don't need another meeting then. I don't think, do we?
Unless you want me to hear me say the same thing again. So I'm happy to do it.
I hear you. I think you answered my question, Aaron, thanks. Walter?
Well, the question, the open question on affordable housing is, do you want the working committee to go off and try and come up with another clause, or do you, as a board of selectmen, want to take that issue and work it with George?
Well, why don't you let us take a whack at it? I will commit that we will come back to the committee wherever we end up with George before we go forward with any agreement. Is that fair? Okay. Is everybody okay with that? I mean, to me, that we should do that. You guys have worked very hard and should be party to that. So George is slated to be here for the neighbors. I mentioned to you, Mark, earlier, there's going to be a meeting on July 20th, which is a Monday, here.
It's been moved to the library, I believe. I just got a note.
Okay.
Yes, it did.
That's a Whitney. It's
Been moved to the library.
Library meeting room.
Library meeting room on July 20th, 7 o'clock.
Foxborough Stadium next.
Foxborough Stadium. Well, it's a closer walk. We can walk to the meeting then. And George will be here, and it's for the Pondville neighborhood to talk about their concerns and issues and how we can mitigate those issues as best we can. Water, maybe we can have some answers by then on the water issue. And then he is slated to meet with the Board of Selectmen on the 21st, which will be an open public meeting.
Yeah, I'd like to review that, that date before we put a pin in that. But
Okay? Does that mean you can't be here?
yeah, I've had to travel that whole week for
Okay.
weeks at that point, too.
Okay. Well, we'll see. How we can work it out.
Thank you.
You guys have been, ladies and guys, have been absolutely terrific. You have put in long, long hours and worked very, very hard on this. And I know I speak for my two brethren. Thank you very much for all the effort and time you put into it. Very, very grateful. So thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you. And Mark, thanks for being active in it. We need it. No, not at all. You're just you're the ones we should be listening to. You're going to live next to it. So we want to mitigate it as much as we can. So thank you for that. Thanks. Thanks.
Bring it home.
I'm going to try. Yeah, just as people don't know that, and by the way, I have finance is my business. I have gone through those numbers left, right. I put different factors on it, Peter, for the schools. I've looked at different towns. No matter how you look at this, the financial benefits to the town. Now, I'm not in any way dismissing the issues it brings to the town. That's what we've been trying to mitigate. But the numbers, the financials, you look at the water hookup fees, the $2,800 per unit, and you go through all of those numbers, this is an enormous financial benefit to the town. It's the largest financial revenue source the town's ever seen. And I hope if it does go forward, if the town so sees fit, I hope that when this gets to another board at some point in time, because it won't be maybe these guys, it won't be me in 10 years, that they have the infinite wisdom to manage it properly, because if it's done right, this can really build up some reserves and do some good things for the community. So I hope that this source doesn't get wasted, preaching to whoever else may be choosing to spend it. But as citizens, let's make sure they spend it right, because some of our neighboring towns that have had similar types of windfalls have not had that wisdom.
It's only 3.5 more terms.
To be here.
Oh, no, not a chance. Not a chance. You guys will get rid of me before that. But anyway, thank you all very much.
Thank you. Thanks for the time.
Thank you. That's right. Thank you, everybody.
Well done, Peter. Thanks. That was great.
Yeah.
Hard work.
A lot of sure. We get the easy stuff. We get the fun stuff to negotiate the rest, to figure out the rest.
Maybe we should take a break? Take a 5-minute break?
We haven't got a lot more business. Do you want to?
Really don't. What?
You need to.
Just a restroom break.
You need to go do something.
Just take a break.
Okay.
Christine,
Sorry, Jeff. We're hard ass.
we're gonna take a 5-minute break.
Thank you. I forget Jeff. My apologies. Mr. Vice Chairman. I forget you.
Thank you. Sorry for the brief pause. All right, where we left off, we were talking about a meeting with George Valone on the 21st, and then our next Board of Selectmen's meeting is the 28th. We were going to meet on the 14th, but that creates a conflict with your board, the planning board. So you had indicated you had a conflict on the 28th, right? I mean, the 21st. You're
Yeah,
gonna be
that
traveling?
week, yeah, that week.
And the 14th, how about if we move our meeting from the 14th to the 15th? Can you do that?
Wednesday the 15th.
Can you do that? And I will call George and see if he can meet with us either on the 15th or the 28th. Is that agreeable?
Agreeable. Thank you.
And because it's important that all three of us be party to all of these meetings with George, so. So we will not meet on the 14th, we will meet on the 15th, we will not meet on the 21st, we will meet on the 28th. So our next meeting will be July 15th, hopefully George will be there. If he can't make that one, it will be the 28th. And can you reschedule the gentleman
I
on
will.
106, 108?
I will.
Hopefully to the 15th, if not to the 20th. I'm sorry for all the
No,
confusion,
that's
but
fine. I can do
I
it.
think it's very important that you're here for that meeting, so. Thank you. I know you're the one that had the conflict, so
Yeah,
thank you
no
for
problem.
being so flexible.
Back out my summer. And I'm finished my tennis.
This won't cause any family feud. or
No, it's
anything.
not, no, it's just, it's a town resident I play tennis with, so he might not vote for me next time, but that's all right. Right? Hopefully I get your vote, Lee.
What, me?
No, Lee, my tennis partner, I'm gonna have to, yeah.
Oh, your tennis partner?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
He'll have to be a
All right.
resident.
Let's see. All right, where are we?
Action items.
Action items. Mr. Clerk, you're
Yeah,
reading the
yes.
agenda tonight.
Sure, I'd like to make a motion to approve the Surge DPW supplier contract for 12 months commencing July 1st, 2015.
You all get a chance to look at it?
Second?
Do I have a motion? You did,
I
I'm
made a
sorry.
motion.
You have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Also, I'd like to make a motion to reappoint John Weddleton to the Conservation Commission, term to expire 2018.
Second?
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I'd like to make a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Weddleton.
Thank you, John. It was probably out still outside. I make a motion to appoint Don Hanson to the Zoning Board of Appeals, full member, term to expire 2020.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I'd like to make a motion to appoint Jeff Chalmers to the Zoning Board of Appeals, associate member, term to expire 2016.
Second?
In favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Perfect.
Discussion items. I'm guilty of not having time to do a draft of the goals. Is anybody else guilty of that?
Yes, I am guilty, sir, as
So
well.
we're all guilty of that? So can we make a point of trying to do that by our next meeting?
Yes.
It's good that we're all equally guilty on
Can
that.
send them to Jack.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
You have a copy of the notice to the Lake Street residents from Mr. McGee.
Yes.
Did you all get a chance to read it?
I think we
Wanna
just
take a second to
received
read
it
it?
this evening, right?
It's got-
Yeah.
Did it go out, Marion, do we know?
It is not.
Oh, no, even though it's
You just-
dated June
Yeah, we
26th.
asked to review
Yeah,
it
he
before.
wanted
Okay, yeah, other than changing the date, I'm fine with that. I think get out sooner the better. I'm sure
Well,
Bob.
Bob
will
is
be
on
requesting.
vacation this week, so.
Can't we send it out on his behalf?
I don't know. I don't know.
I don't think it'll,
Because him and Jack are both,
yeah, I don't think the earth will
No, I mean,
move if we wait until they get back on Monday to send it out.
fine, just change the
Are
date.
you guys okay with that? Any suggested changes, or you okay with it?
I think that, I'm sure people have had questions. I would think they've contacted Bob or Jack or one of us about that, but.
That seems fine.
You good, Jeff? Mm-hmm. All right, we're good. Okay. Other issues, guys?
No minutes,
Marianne, I know we tried to keep it light without Mr. Hathaway. I did want to tell you that I did get a brief update. We'll get a more formal one at our next meeting on the financials. We're
Yeah.
getting close to the close of the end of the year. As always, Julie does a phenomenal job, but the financials look extremely good, very favorable for us towards the
she
year
said
end.
if you have any questions, just call her.
Is this the only copy?
No, we
Y'all
have.
have copy, okay.
We have it. I looked briefly, but it looks great.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
For folks at home, our revenues have exceeded our estimates. Our expenses are lower than we anticipated. By the way, this is the 9th year in a row that has been the case. The schools are returning six figures to us in terms back to the general fund by underspending their budget. So we expect that in October, we will have a fairly good sum once again of free cash. So to all our department heads that continue to do great work and manage their budgets very well, and to Mr. Hathaway, who is the one chiefly responsible for the budget, again, job well done. I'm actually kind of hopeful that we can sneak a few more bucks into the stabilization fund.
Yeah, this is excellent.
Yeah, they look really good. So, Mr. Palumbo, anything else, Jeff?
Thank you.
No, just as you mentioned at the beginning of our meeting, wish everyone a happy 4th and a safe 4th as well.
Yeah, please be safe. Let's hope that our nation is safe. That would be a good thing.
I'm good.
Scott, anything? Marion?
No, all set?
Okay. Thank you very much for joining us. Again, our next meeting will be Wednesday, July 15th. We'll have several developers in visiting us that evening, so we're always looking for folks to join us, so if you got nowhere to go, come on down.
Motion to close?
Motion seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Have a healthy and safe holiday. Thank you very much. Good night.